The digestive system, lesson 6.3 review. So this is just going to be a quick review of everything that we've learned up until now in the digestive system. And this can be just a quick little review if you have a test or you just want to refresh yourself on everything in this specific lesson or unit. So, the function of the digestive system. Essentially, it is to ingest food. It digests food and takes in the nutrients from those food so that they can cross cellular membranes. It's also responsible for eliminating the ingestible materials that we do take in. So it has all these different types of parts, and essentially the path goes from the mouth all the way down to the anus. So now let's talk about all the different parts of the digestive system. We have the mouth, which receives foods, and it also has taste buds. And remember, the front part is the hard palate, whereas the back part is the more soft palate. And then it also has the tongue, which has the salivary glands, which secrete saliva. We then have the teeth, which are the 20 teeth that appear in the first 2 years of life, and then we get 32 adult teeth. And remember, we have the incisors, the canines, the premolars, and then the molars. And obviously, teeth break down food. Then we have the pharynx, which is the region that receives food from the mouth. And remember, we also saw this in the respiratory system. It's connected to the trachea and the epiglottis. Speaking of the epiglottis is sort of the flap that allows for food to sort of be sorted, so to make sure that food doesn't go down your windpipe and that it enters the trachea properly, the esophagus properly. Speaking of this esophagus, the esophagus is a muscular tube that passes from the pharynx throughout the thoracic cavity down all the way near to the diaphragm. It does something called peristalsis, which is, remember, the muscular contractions that push food down the digestive tract, and that's what's known as mechanical digestion. The last one is the stomach, which is, remember, the main thing, and it's the thick-walled J-shaped organ that's located towards the left side. It stores food and helps with digestion. And then remember, the rugae is, when it's expanded, it helps increase the surface area in the stomach so that it can fill to its max, which in most people is 1 liter. And then it also produces the 3 gastric juices that we talked about, so pepsin, hydrochloric acid, and then mucus. We also have the 4 layers of the digestive wall. So that we have the mucosa, the submucosa, the muscularis, and the serosa. Now we can start looking at the small and large intestine, which is where most of the action happens in the digestive system. So just a quick little recap on both of those. The small intestine's main job is to absorb nutrients. So all absorption of nutrients happens here, and the way it can do this is through the microvilli, which, like the rugae, increase the surface area. It also breaks down into 3 parts: the duodenum, the jejunum, and the ileum. Then we have the large intestines, which main job is to reabsorb water from chyme. And remember, chyme is that substance from the stomach. It also breaks down into 4 parts. So we have the cecum, the colon, which breaks down into little sub-parts itself, and you can see them on this diagram. So we have the ascending, the transverse, the descending, and then the sigmoid. It also has the rectum, and then lastly, the final part of the digestive system, the anal cavity. Now we took a look at this enzyme breakdown chart. So if you remember, we talked about a lot of different types of enzymes, but the main ones that I wanted to focus on were the ones that help break down carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. So those are things for the carbohydrates like salivary amylase. For protein, it's things like pepsin or trypsin, and then for fats, the only one is lipase. And if you remember, in order for fats and lipids to be absorbed, they go through a slightly different process, which involves them being emulsified by bile, and then they can enter the lacteals with the villi along with the carbohydrates and the protein, and then the nutrients are carried into the cells of the body by the blood. And then last but not least, we have the 3 accessory glands, which also aid digestion in their own ways. So we have the liver. It's the largest gland in the body, and it has 2 main lobes. And the main thing that happened here is that it removes poisonous substances from our blood, and it makes plasma proteins from amino acids, and it removes bilirubin, which is the product of hemoglobin. We also have the pancreas, which has 2 functions for the endocrine system and the digestive system. So its endocrine function is that it secretes insulin and glucagon, and its digestive purpose is it secretes the pancreatic juices, and we talked about those previously. The last one is the gallbladder, which is that pear-shaped sort of muscular sac, and it stores excess bile from the liver. And remember, we talked about the crystals that could form here as a result of the cholesterol, which are gallstones. Okay, so that's basically all the things that you have to know for the digestive system, sort of crammed into one video. And now we're just going to do a quick quiz. You can pause the video and take a few seconds to answer, and then we'll take them up. Okay, so what is the name of the bag between the esophagus and the small intestine? So if you sort of go back to a diagram of the digestive system, you'll see that it is the stomach. And obviously the tube is the esophagus, and then the next thing from that tube is the stomach. And you can just use common sense about, obviously the esophagus leads to the stomach, and then the stomach to the small intestine. What is the name of the digestive gland located behind the stomach? So remember, it's one of those 3 glands that we learned, and this one is going to be the pancreas. And again, you can double check that by looking at any diagram. The next one is the epiglottis is important because this one is going to be because it prevents food from going down the tracheus. Remember, it's that little flap that we talked about just at the beginning of this video, that it makes sure that food doesn't go down our windpipe. So it's going to be C. And then the last one is, what is the substance secreted by the liver? And if you remember, we talked about that back in the 6.2, and it's going to be amylase. And you can go back and double check those. And that's it. Thank you for watching.